Hey, welcome back to Common Sense OT Security, where we discuss OT security topics and events through the lens of common sense. Today, we are discussing the OT security crisis of 2025. And in case you are wondering what crisis, or did I miss something? Well, maybe you have. So let me tell you what I mean by that. You have to ask yourself a very simple question. Are you happy with the state of OT security? If you are working in this field, I predict that the answer is going to be no, you're not happy. Because we don't see any significant progress being made. And certainly, especially in last year, we have seen lots and lots of layoffs of OT security experts. So that doesn't look like a thriving business or a thriving new school of thought, etc. And today I would like to dive into a couple of potential reasons and give you my take on why I think we are in such a bad shape and what should be done to remedy the situation. Luckily, there is a new piece that just came out by Dale Peterson. And he reflects on this is just from today, a LinkedIn article. He reflects on the reporting season that is now in full swing, where the OT security vendors, they present their findings. I mean, the irony is, you will certainly acknowledge this when you have been in this business for a while. Well, you don't even need to read the report. You know already what's in there. And I could even predict what's going to be in those reports for 2025 and 2026, etc., because it's always the same story. The situation is always getting worse. Oh, how is that? Before we get into it, let me just focus on a couple of very astute observations by Dale. So he is focusing mostly on the Waterfall report. Waterfall is one of the OT security vendors building data diodes, and they're just publishing this annual report highlighting the threat scenario and pinpointing all the attacks that have happened. And so Dale makes a couple of very astute observations. One of them being, and please, this is very important. Now listen very closely. In these reports, whatever it's in there, everything is dramatized to the max and put into the executive briefing, the executive summary. And then the next thing that happens, you can bet on it, this is what the media will be picking up. This is what they will be regurgitating, right? And then certainly the unsuspecting non-expert in OT security, oh, that's scary. 2024 saw a 146% increase in sites suffering physical impairment of operations. Quick, we need to increase our OT security budget. At least that seems to be what the marketing people at Waterfall and other companies seem to assume, right? So just increase the bad news and try to turn this into revenue. If you take a closer look, as our man Dale did, well, that's funny. Well, even though the number of attacks increased by only 5%, and then only 13% of those attacks directly impacted OT. 10 attacks in all of 2024 made it to OT. And as Dale really pointed out very well, this is good news. But you're getting it sold as bad news, as so dramatic, scary news. So one thing that you need to keep in mind whenever you hear these, there is a, I don't know, 200% increase of attacks And then just look closer to the details. And one thing that's always very, very important, don't get carried away by percentages. Because let's just say you read about a 300% increase of OT attacks. Well, if the previous number was 2, and now we are talking about 6 attacks, so what? That's nothing. So what you should keep in mind, the total population of ICS, of PLCs, etc., that's several hundred million. So, I mean, if we are looking at 6 attacks or even 10, that's nothing. And that is, an irony, because this is the analysis that you would arrive at if you're using a risk-based approach, which all of you love. You always love to talk about risk. And then let's be very clear, the numbers don't support your case, my friends. Right? So if you take the concept of risk seriously, not just metaphorically to scare people and to create drama, but if you're taking it seriously, then you cannot avoid looking at the numbers, especially at the absolute numbers, right? And then the case looks very much different. So this is what you're going to see in those reports that are now hitting the public. We have seen the Dragos report just recently, and now you're getting the waterfall report, and others certainly will follow. And the one thing that you can take for granted is whatever did or did not happen in 2024, it's getting worse. And the one thing that's surprising to me is, since we have seen that for a couple of years now, that apparently the marketing guys in all those companies never got the idea, well, wait a second, probably we should just take a step back, because if we constantly, repeatedly tell the public, well, things are getting worse, then some might draw the conclusion, well, they're just doing the wrong thing, right? So what they're suggesting probably just doesn't work. And this is what we're actually seeing, and this is why we're in this crisis of OT security, because the narrative that was pushed over and over again is now backfiring. Just because you're not seeing actual cyber physical attacks in the amount and with the severity that we used to predict. I'm saying we because certainly I was part of that. I was telling the world, well, you got to prepare for nation state cyber physical attacks on US critical infrastructure, etc., etc. But that didn't happen. And when reality doesn't meet your predictions, it's probably warranted to modify your predictions or your overall take on things. And this is apparently something that the OT security vendors struggle to accomplish. So they're just regurgitating those talking points over and over again, and certainly the media, the industry media, is eager to pick those dramatized tidbits and rub it in everybody's face. I mean, for the media, it's very simple. They're not interested in facts or the truth. They're only interested in clicks, because this is what is generating their revenue, their ad revenue, okay? So they will be happy. They will be more than happy to publish those headlines from the executive summary that all sound very dark and very dramatic. And that gets us to the next aspect of this whole fiasco and of this whole crisis. I think it's a fair characterization to label that whole scenario that is imposed on us an OT security ghost ride. What do I mean by that? Well, if you go into those reports, or if you are taking the ride, if you will, oh, you can bet you will get scared. However, you will not really be in danger, right? So you come out as, oh, that was scary, but still the vampires, etc., they didn't actually attack you, but you did have a scary ride. And unfortunately, that is the world that we live in OT security in 2025. It is a ghost ride, an OT security ghost ride, where you are presented all those scary creatures of the dark, all those threat actors, the Shryptonite and the Kryptonite, and you know, all those fancy names, with all those very dangerous attack tools, malware, etc. But nothing really happens as a result of that. So you will leave that ghost ride untouched. And this is something that dawns on more and more people, that it's probably, I mean, if you have taken the ghost ride once, maybe you do it another time, but you don't want to do that over and over again, especially if you are not doing it for the thrills of it, but you are actually doing it for some business purposes. And this is one thing I alluded to in my meme that I posted yesterday on LinkedIn. Well, you know, this very popular meme, "Are you winning, son?" And the son responds, "No, Dad, but these OT threat detection alerts always give me the thrills." So I would state that this is a fair description for a lot of people working in threat hunting, etc. And unfortunately, that's not what the business is actually looking for. So they are looking for progress. And this is where we are now entering this crisis, because in that threat-centric OT security approach, where you always focus on the threat actors and on the of attacks that did happen last year, when you take a closer look, it turns out, well, several of them affected devices that were exposed to the public internet. Well, then, okay, you lost me there. So the bottom line is, in a threat and centric OT security approach, things are only getting worse. Please think about it for a second. Here is my prediction. You will not hear about any progress in this environment. So, as I said, you can bet, I predict the next reports reflecting on 2025, they will tell you the very same thing. Oh, things got worse. Things got worse. They will never tell you, oh, actually, you know, it's only those 5 attacks that we have seen. Those were trivial, and they involve PLCs exposed to the public internet. So we are good. We did it. You're not going to hear that. And instead, things will get worse. And now we are reaching this inflection point where this is no longer credible. So, you know, the phraseology, you have heard it over and over again. In the constantly changing world of OT cyber threats, the risks are higher than higher than ever before. It's always the same thing, which then prompts me to ask, okay, higher from what? So how high are they now, and how high were they the year before? And once that you enter in this discussion, you will certainly not get any meaningful answers, because it's not real. It's just a phrase, a metaphor to increase your engagement. This is like the dramatization that's going on. So nobody of these experts will be able to tell you, I can show you, last year the risk was 25 and now it's 37. No, they don't have anything quantitative. And if you don't have any quantitative data, this whole talking point, the risks are higher than ever before, doesn't make any sense. It's just a phrase without any meaning, other than suggesting, whoa, I think that this is really important, and it's getting more and more important, but it cannot be backed up by any factual information. So, the talking points: constantly increasing risk, ever evolving threats, and then everything is critical, even if it's only, let's just say, some minor plant component, some minor PLC. You remember my discussion of those attacks against Israeli gas stations, right? So, I mean, who cares, right? If I don't know, 5 gas stations in Israel are out of order, certainly not the Israelis, because they have 1,200 gas stations in their small country. So now, what do we make of that? How can we resolve this crisis? I would like to be very clear about one thing. So you will not be able to resolve this crisis in the prevailing narrative. No. You will just be stuck in that hamster wheel of pain. In that threat-centric approach, you will always be, you will never see real progress. And this is what the business is interested in. So they don't hire all those OT security analysts for the kicks of it and for the thrills. They want to see progress. And it's actually not so difficult to point out why we are in this situation, or why we are caught in this situation. Because if you look at that NIST cybersecurity framework, I think everybody is familiar with that, then over the last couple of years, with the prevalence of the OT threat detection products, this is the narrow scope that you have been focused on. So this is only the detection piece of that whole cybersecurity framework. And the problem is that no real progress can be made, so, in incremental improvements, etc., in that space, because it's an activity that pretty much resembles a whack-a-mole game. So the mole will always pop up at a new position, and you will never be able to hit them all in a sustainable manner. And this is not what business wants. So if you if you want to break free from that hamster wheel of pain, what I suggest to do is to take a look at all the other areas, certainly including protection, right? So this is where the real progress is being made, but certainly also in response and recovery. But protection, governance, this area was vastly underrepresented over the last couple of years. And I tell you my opinion. It's for me, it's very simple. This is a result of hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing power that have been dumped on you to suggest, no, OT threat detection is so super important. And that's the method of choice for OT security. And this is what has put the whole sector in this crisis, because people, customers, the critical infrastructure, etc., they don't see any real improvement. And so what I suggest is we will only get out of this crisis when we push approaches that can credibly point to a way to success, to improvement, and ultimately to success. And in my opinion, so certainly I've spent a couple of years thinking about it, if not a couple of decades. It is not so difficult if you just take a step back from detection, because all the other sectors in the NIST cybersecurity framework, they favor approaches and methods that can actually lead to improvement, and where you can measure the improvement. I think that's a very important aspect. So just as an example, think of vulnerability management. there are tools available. As a matter of fact, we happen to sell such a product that allow you to arrive at effective vulnerability management, where meaning that you will see, okay, now we are actually making progress. Now we can predict that, I don't know, in 2 years or 3 years, we will have reached that level where we no longer need to be scared about that next new vulnerability that drops from the internet. No, we will be good because we have established a method, a process that guarantees that we will keep the vulnerabilities at a level where we say, okay, that's good enough. So with vulnerability management, it's very simple in a nutshell. Conceptually, it's very simple. You will never be able to mitigate all the vulnerabilities in an OT environment because it's just too much. And the mitigation is very costly. It's much more costly than in IT. So therefore, you will have to prioritize what you're doing. And that means you will only be able to make a reasonable progress if that prioritization is actually very good, meaning it yields substantial results. And this is what a proper analytic platform will be able to tell you. And it will also show you the exact progress that you're making or maybe not making because you don't have enough budget to actually make it happen. Just again, let me remind you, OT vulnerability management so it's quite expensive. It's not like you just apply all those patches automatically as you're used to in IT. Then another aspect, automatic online audits. So first of all, and this alludes to this inner circle of the NIST cybersecurity framework, this governance circle, which is super, super important. Without governance, there is no progress, my friends, in that space. I mean, so if it's just threat detection anarchy, you shouldn't expect progress. So the governance piece drives that whole thing, and the governance requires audits. Otherwise, so let me break that down a little bit here. So governance means you actually set targets, what you want to achieve. So let's just assume, going back to vulnerability management, you have established that for your organization, you want to be at a specific level based on policies that this organization has introduced. And that could be whatever is appropriate for that organization. So certainly for a nuclear power plant, it's going to be different than for a cookie factory. And then, so the governance implies that you set targets, call them security targets if you want. And those targets are absolutely meaningless without an audit. And this is where the requirement for audits come in. And that used to be a very difficult activity in the past let me take that back. It still is for the vast majority of companies in present day, because the way they approach audits is completely backwards, like we would be living still in the 80s. So they send the auditor on site, and the auditor is usually perceived by the poor folks on site as some kind of an inquisitor, like in the Dark Ages, in Spain and those countries ruled by Spain, by the Catholic Church, where then the Inquisitor had the duty to just find all the heretics and then check out their severity of deviance from the approved school of thought, which was the Catholic religion in those days. And this is how the auditor usually is perceived, and that's nonsense. So that is the old days. Today you can do your audits automatically and online. There is no need to send out the inquisitor to all those plants and have him or her consume your precious meeting rooms, etc. No, it can all be done online. Let me give you a very simple example. Your organization has introduced a policy stating, well, all those engineering stations must have antivirus installed, and the antivirus must be up to date. What a silly exercise would that be to determine policy compliance for such a policy in a walk-down inspection. That is such a silly waste of time and human resources. So all of that can be done online. It can be done automatically. We may go into more details in an upcoming session where I show you how it's done in OT base, where you hack in your policy criteria, just like the one that I told you. Okay, got to have antivirus enabled and up to date, and then OT base will spit it out right away. Or like all the Windows boxes subject to that policy, all the ones that are compliant, all the ones that are non-compliant. So and you have that result like in 5 seconds, and this can be extended to other areas, such as presence of prohibited software, such as Adobe Flash Player, or use of insecure protocols such as Telnet, HTTP. I mean, we will get to that in a follow-up webcast. So all of that is taken care of today, reporting with solid metrics, and only if you have that, so like the factual numerical foundation, then you can talk about continuous improvement. Before, you cannot. Because, so let's go back to that phrase that you hear over and over again. Oh, the risk is ever improving. No, this is just bullshit, my friends. Because unless you back it up with numbers, it's just a silly talking point. And this is what gets you into trouble. And this is why decision makers lose trust in OT security products, exercises, and that's our fault. It's not their fault. If you feed them bullshit for so long, then don't start to cry when they cut back on the budget, when they just fire hundreds of OT security experts. That is our fault, because you must show them the way to success. And certainly you must also tell your success stories, rather than always doing this care thing with a ghost ride, right? So it's always getting worse. Who wants to hear that? I mean, this is not a really solid sales proposition. Who wants to live in such a notion? It's only getting worse. No, I don't want to buy that product. I want to buy the product that actually shows me how we can improve. This is what business wants. And it looks to me like the predominant OT security vendors are so stuck in their lanes. Probably they just don't know any better. They lack the creativity or what, that they will just continue that narrative, and this will drive things into the ground. So don't whine about it when you are participating in that exercise. The only hope for improvement is to show customers, to show, I don't know, even if you think about the public at large, well, actually we can handle it, we can solve this problem. I take the solve back, because OT security can never be solved, like disease cannot never be solved, right? So there will always be disease, there will always be OT security risk, but that's not the point. I mean, business executives are adults. They don't expect the problem to be solved. They expect it to be managed to the level where they don't need to spend crazy resources for this non-productive topic. Keep that in mind. OT security is not a an activity that makes the business money. It's an activity that loses money, and they want to keep it at the minimum level, but still they want to see improvements. So I leave you with that. Certainly, I just want to be very open and frank. So I just thought, well, just be very clear, so that you have a counterpoint to consider. I don't expect you to adopt my perspective. I just want to give you some food for thought. Okay, bye-bye then.